If you own a roofing company and you're not leveraging a service and maintenance department to grow your re-roof or your roof replacement business, you're leaving thousands, if not millions of dollars on the table. Now, what do I mean by that? The most profitable roofing companies aren't just selling re-roofs, right? They're actually selling these long-term maintenance agreements, these maintenance contracts that turn your one-time jobs, right, your one-time customers into continued payments from those clients, which over time basically doubles or triples the profit that you make over the lifetime of every client. So they're not just these businesses, they're not just chasing insurance claims. They're literally, not playing the let's bid to the bottom game, and they're not dealing with long, exhausting sales cycles. So in this video, I'm going to share with you guys, and I'm going to break down exactly how we're scaling re-roof businesses with service and maintenance so that you can do it too. And look, if this is a new idea, or you've strayed away from repairs or maintenance in the past, or if you're skeptical for any reason, I can 100% understand. But this is not for convincing you that my way is the only way to make money in roofing, right? There's plenty of ways to make money in roofing. There's plenty of guys that continue to chase the insurance claims, and they do get paid out, but they're just on this never ending, hamster wheel of chasing opportunity. So I'm simply going to show you guys what's working for me and the companies that don't want to start, every January 1st from zero and have to climb those same mountains again. So at the end of this video, if you like what you hear, right, and you like what I have to say, and you want my help implementing these systems into your business, I'll invite you guys to take the next step. And if that's not for you, then no big deal, right? Either way, you guys are going to walk away with proven strategies that can, I can assure you will help you crush this year. And one quick note, this training that I kind of put together here, it's 100% not for newbies, right? If you're brand new to the industry, or just getting started in roofing, this won't be super useful to you. But if you're already running a decent sized team, you're already, doing jobs, and you're looking for just a roadmap to help you crush this year, this is for you. If you have no idea who I am, my name's Cody Klein, and I help roofing companies scale their re-roof, their roof replacement businesses with a model that I've refined over the past decade. And so after serving in the US Air Force, I spent 13 years building my own commercial roofing business, and ultimately selling that business, Jag Roofing and Sheet Metal, as a part of a nationwide acquisition strategy. And in 2023, I was also recognized as the roofing industry's, what they call the young gun, by Roofing Contractor Magazine. So along that journey, something that I learned that I feel like most roofers never do, right? I mean, with a lot of roofing companies, guys that have been in the industry 30, 40 plus years, is that the most successful roofing businesses, the guys that you see at the top of the Roofing Contractor Magazine's top 150 list or top 100 list, is that they're not just chasing re-roofs, right? They're actually securing these service and maintenance agreements that you've heard me speak about just a couple minutes ago that create predictable and recurring revenue in your business. And so if you make, money doing re-roofs or doing replacements on either buildings or homes, this is literally what I would consider like the rocket fuel your business needs just to do more of that. And so since exiting Jag Roofing and Sheet Metal in 2021, I've worked with a handful of businesses already to help them consistently generate opportunities. With the sales process that we implement in with the service departments, we are closing deals faster than any other businesses that I've ever seen. We're doubling their profit per client with the recurring revenue. And then I think first and foremost, the most important piece to this is that we're able to scale beyond the founder with efficient systems and effective teams. And so today, I'm going to show you exactly really two things. Number one, why growing the re-roof business with a proactive service department works. And then number two, how you can actually do it, right? What are the building blocks that you need to put in place to actually roll this out in your company? So first, I've got three reasons why this works, right? Most companies think that repair and maintenance are small peanuts, right? They think that, that there's little money to be made, and that their resources could be allocated towards, more re-roofs or larger projects. But they're missing out on the biggest piece here. And that's because if you look at the biggest brands in the world, not even just in the roofing industry, but just the biggest businesses in the world, they all focus on one thing, and that one thing is client retention. And it's because fundamentally, smart business people understand that if you strip away all the fluff and all the noise and all the random business advice out there, that growing a company really comes down to two things. Number one, we've got to get more customers, right? But number two, getting more money from each customer will also grow the business. And that's it. Every roofing business grows one of those two ways, right? Either getting more customers or getting money from each customer. Yet 99% of roofing companies, including mine in the early days, only focus on the first one, right? The getting more customers, right? They continually chase that next client, right? That next lead that could turn into a prospect. And so every year, those companies are resetting to zero. And they wake up on January 1st thinking, I need more customers, right? And so, as an arbitrary number and kind of an example here, let's say you did 100 roofing contracts this year. On January 1st, you know, clock strikes midnight, January 1st, your scoreboard is going to reset. You have to climb last year's same mountain just to go find another 100 contracts to stay even. And if you want to double your business, which is not uncommon for me to, when I talk with these roofing business owners, it's not uncommon for me to hear, yeah, our goal is to double our business this year, or sometimes even more aggressive. But that literally means that if you want to double your business, you have to do 200 contracts next year, right? And then if you want to double again, 400 and 800 and 1600. This is where most roofing business owners set massive revenue goals without actually thinking through what it's actually going to take to get there. So it's not just, if you want to do that, it's not just doubling your marketing. It's not just selling, 100 to 200 to 400 roofs. You also have to double everything else. You have to double your sales team, double your production capacity and capabilities, double your crews, double your operations, double your cash flow. And when you scale that way, growth gets exponentially harder. Business gets exponentially harder every single year for you, because not only do you have to become a world-class marketer to bring in, that amount of leads, or be able to hire a world-class marketer, which they're few and far between. You'll also have to build a world-class company that can actually handle that volume, right? It's a brutal kind of like an uphill climb. But the smartest roofing owners that I talk to and that I have in my world, they are not playing that same game. Instead of selling a roof once and moving on, they're literally turning every customer, whether it's a repair, a replacement, a partial, they're turning every single customer into long-term revenue, right? They stack every bit of revenue is kind of stacking on top of each other instead of starting over every year. So I just gave you an example of what a traditional transactional style roofing company, if they want to double, but what that looks like. But if you look at it on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'll give you an example using a compounding model instead of that transactional or traditional model. So instead of selling those 100 jobs and resetting to zero, when the clock strikes midnight on this upcoming January 1st, you could sell 100 jobs this year and lock in service agreements on all of those and keep 70 to 80% of those clients paying you year after year after year. So instead of waking up, like I said, on the new year, needing to find 100 new clients, you already have that revenue from last year rolling in from all of those customers. And so every new year, every new customer you add to the system, again, like I said just a moment ago, kind of stacks on the old ones. And so this is how roofing businesses scale past 20, 50, $100 million a year, without having to sacrifice their souls and drink the blood of their enemies just to grow their business. And so that's the first reason. Okay. The second reason that I see the roofing industry as most roofers are fighting for scraps. All right. And the reality of the roofing industry is, like, if we think about the life cycle of a roof, right? The average roof lasts approximately 25 years. All right. Give or take, depending on the system. There's probably a pretty damn close average. And that means that over the span of the next 25 years, 100% of those roofs will need to be replaced, okay? And in any given year, right, if you're using that same math, only about 4% of the market actually needs a replacement, right? Not factoring in storms. But if we're just talking, the life cycle of an actual roof system. But the other, so if 4% of the market we know is going to need replaced this year, the other 96% still needs maintenance, repairs, and service. Yet most roofers ignore that 96%, right? They're fighting over the same tiny little fraction of buildings that actually need a re-roof, competing with every other contractor. And these are the same guys that are slashing their prices to win bids and starting, they're doing what I was telling you not to do. They're starting from zero every year. Meanwhile, they could just be focused on, serving that 96% and signing clients, doing repairs, doing some maintenance, and signing clients into actually signing service agreements before their roofs ever need a replacement. So when the time comes and they actually need to be replaced, the deal's already theirs, right? There's no bidding wars. There's no race to the bottom by having to slash your prices. There's no fighting for the jobs. It's just taking the roofs off the streets and owning that relationship before your competitors even have a chance. All right, and reason number 3, let's talk about the most profitable reason a service and maintenance roofing model is going to completely crush any old model or transactional model. And so I'll break this down with some simple numbers. Let's say you sell a $20,000 roofing project, whether it's, whatever a $20,000 roofing project is for you. Could be a replacement, a repair, or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. If your gross profit margin is, say, 40%, that means that, you know, before overhead, you're going to pocket about $8,000. Not bad. But what if on top of that, you also lock in that client to $1,000 a year service agreement? And that's like as cheap as they come pretty much. So we'll say worst case scenario, you get that client on $1,000 a year service agreement where you aim for 80% margins, right? That $1,000 agreement, you should be making an additional 800. Now, over the next 10 years, that client's actually worth an extra $8,000 in profit. And suddenly that one customer is worth double what they were before. And that's not including, any storm work that comes from it. That's not including any repairs that possibly come up for emergency type work. And so this changes everything because when your client is worth, twice as much to you as they are your competitors, you're going to gain a massive unfair advantage. You can spend more to acquire new clients, right? You can spend more money in your marketing so you can outmarket them, you can out advertise them, and you can outgrow them. This is what Warren Buffett calls the power of scale economics. When you make more per client than all of your competitors, you can aggressively reinvest into the business, into your growth, while your competitors are stuck just playing defense. All right. They can't afford to market at scale. They can't afford to hire the best people. They can't afford to dominate their city, but you can. And so to me, this is why service and maintenance isn't about just making extra money. It's about taking over the entire market. Because when you make 2 to 3 times more per client than every other roofing company around you, like I said earlier, you can outspend, you can outgrow, you can outlast all of the competitors. So if you're not sold on why this model is so freaking insane by now, you either love the torture of, chasing client after client, or I'm convinced you hate money. And whether you're all in or a bit still on the fence, let's just jump into the 3 big levers that you can pull to actually make this work. Let's talk about how you can implement it into your business. The first lever that we can pull is basically structuring your offer the right way. And I'll start by saying this, that I don't think most roofers have an offer problem. I think they just have a packaging problem, right? The way they're packaging it up and their messaging basically to the market. So let me break this down for you. Basically, every time you inspect a roof, that roof is going to fall into one of 3 categories. It's either, brand new and doesn't need much attention, or it's at the other end of the spectrum at the end of its life and it needs to be replaced, or it's somewhere here in the middle, right? Which means it needs service, repairs, or maintenance. That's kind of that 96% that we were talking about. The problem is most roofers focus on number 2, right? The roofs that are here at the end of their life and actually need to be replaced. But you already learned earlier, the reality is the average roof is going to last, right? That lifespan is about 25 years. meaning that, again, over the 25 years, 100% of the roofs will be due for replacement, and the 4% of the roofs are ready each year, but the other 96% of needs the service, maintenance, and repairs. That's that in between part. And so this is why I use what I call a two-tiered service model to monetize every qualified opportunity. Like if it's a roof that we can help, or it's a building owner or a facilities manager or a property manager that we can help, this is how we need to structure our packaging for our offer, right? For our service offerings. So tier number one, there's two tiers, and tier number one is going to be what we call a preventative maintenance agreement. For sure, you may hear me reference this as a PMA, but this is essentially just a paid service plan that's going to cover you going out, doing routine inspections, cleaning off the roof, doing minor repairs, making sure the drains are clean, just like getting, for your car, it'd be like getting oil changes or swapping the wiper blades or rotating the tires. And it's basically just like the small investments that these building owners can make that's going to prevent them from having, massive expenses down the road. And so what it does for your business is basically it's going to create the recurring and predictable revenue for you guys. So the clients aren't just paying you once again for the repair or the replacement, they will pay you ongoing. And that's the mechanism that we utilize to get that recurring revenue, right? The PMA, or the preventative maintenance agreement. Now, tier number two is the tool that I utilize to recycle leads. Okay. And we call it a master service agreement because some clients won't commit to a paid maintenance plan, right? There's some multifamily property complexes, there's some homeowners, there's some building owners that they're just not going to commit to it. But that does not mean that you should lose them, right? We're going to recycle them. Like I said, this is our tool to recycle. And so with an MSA, you're going to sign them into a free agreement that basically guarantees you're going to be their first call when something goes wrong. And this is more of, if the preventative maintenance agreement that I just shared with you guys is proactive, this is what I consider the more reactive model versus the proactive one. And so you'll visit the roof every year, you'll conduct a free audit, you'll document any issues, and then you'll present them with a service proposal to do whatever needs to be done, right? So we're not proactively going out there and doing these things, but we're going out there and reactively writing up what needs to be done. And guess what? So since you're the only contractor that is consistently in front of them and you're out there every year, they're never going to call your competition, right? Unless your guys mess something up or you mess something up. This strategy ensures, like having this two-tiered strategy is going to ensure that whether someone wants to pay for maintenance today, you're always positioned and kind of packaged as their go-to roofer. And now, as important as that is, right, a key component of packaging things correctly, that is only a third of the battle, right? We also need a predictable system to actually have these opportunities. So we've got to have a way to generate high quality leads without relying on random referrals or burning cash on ads that don't actually end up working. And so as a roofer, there's technically 4 ways that we can generate business, but there's only 3 ways that we can generate new leads. Okay. And so I'll fill you in on the 4th one later, but let's focus on the first 3 right now. The first way is that we can attract leads, right? So we use something called attraction marketing, which is where that is the SEO, the content, the brand awareness strategies to generate inbound leads over time. And this does work well. Like you'll see some of the bigger companies doing this, but it takes 6 to 12 months usually to build some momentum, right? It could take even longer sometimes. And so most roofers, especially guys that are, aggressively trying to get into this space or trying to scale in this space, they don't really have time to wait. And so it's a long-term play, not really an immediate solution. The second way that you can get new clients is through paid advertising. So you can run ads on Google, Facebook or Meta, YouTube, or any other platform really to generate leads. And paid ads, they can work well. But honestly, I don't push anyone into paid ads if they don't have a dialed in sales process. And so otherwise, if you don't have a sales process that's, converting at a really high rate, then you're just going to be burning money on low quality leads that don't end up converting. And you're going to get, a few months down the road and be like, these paid ads really don't work. the reality is probably it's something else. It's probably more of a conversion issue, but nonetheless, I don't really push people into, just like I don't push people into attraction marketing. I also wouldn't recommend the paid advertising as you're getting started. The third way that we can get new leads, though, is called pursuit marketing. And some people call this business development. You might hear me reference it as business development. That's kind of that's the term I've always utilized. But it's literally where we're actively going after the deals we want and instead of waiting for them to come to us. All right. And so this includes things like cold calling, walking into buildings, knocking on doors, sending LinkedIn messages, direct outreach via email, networking at industry events. All of those things are what I consider business development or pursuit marketing. And this is the fastest and the highest return on investment method because you actually control the lead flow, right? Like I said, you're not waiting for the marketing to kick in and just start working. And you're also going to avoid the low quality leads that you will have to sift through with paid ads, right? Paid ads generates typically high volume of leads, but they're not as dialed in. They're not always qualified. And so business development almost costs pretty much nothing in compared to running ads or an SEO campaign and attraction methods. So if you want leads now, this is how you get them, right? And if you don't have a repeatable outbound sales system or a business development system, you're always going to be at the mercy of word of mouth, waiting on referrals or expensive marketing campaigns. Like I said, that probably won't work for you because you don't have the sales system in place. Now, let me explain how I implement a business development system that actually works. And so any business development strategy requires, in my head, three main things. Number one, we've got to have a strategy with a clear objective, right? We've got to know when we're making the phone call or we're walking into the building or we're knocking on the door, what is the objective? What are we asking? What are we trying to move that client toward or prospect towards? And a lot of guys are like, well, we're trying to sell a roof. It's like, no, dude, you're not trying to sell a roof. The same way that, like, if you're married right now, on the first date, you were also not trying to ask your wife to marry you, right? Or ask your husband to marry you. And if you did, then maybe that's a weird one-off that it actually worked, but I highly doubt it. And so the first thing is we have to know what our objective is, and we usually want to take baby steps. We want to get small commitments to lead us to the roof replacement or roof project down the road. So, number one, strategy with a clear objective. Number two is we have to have a way to actually track the process, the progress, and the pipeline. And then the third thing is we have to have a scorecard to know if we're winning or losing and ultimately why we're winning or losing. And so, in order to succeed, after you have all those three things laid out, you must do what's required, right? So this is an interesting topic, but success in business development almost always demands way more effort and way more repetition than anyone thinks that, as they get into it. And so at the time of recording this, I literally just got back a couple days ago, just returned from a workshop out in Las Vegas where the host shared a story basically about trying to grow his local office by distributing flyers. He had a friend who successfully used this strategy of going out and putting the flyers on cars in another market. So he printed 300 flyers one day and went out and him and a couple guys from his office, they distributed them all in one night in parking lots all around the town. And the next morning, he waited on the phone to ring. But instead of generating leads, he basically didn't get anything. And except for he said he did get like one complaint basically saying he scratched their Mercedes. So he was like, yep, not talking to you. But frustrated, that dude said, he's like, hey, I called my friend the next day and I was like, hey man, this strategy didn't work for us. And his buddy was like, okay, that's interesting. How many flyers did you put out? And he's like, dude, a lot. We put out 300 in one night. And he said his buddy started laughing, right? He said, dude, we start with 5,000 flyers per day and we scale up from there. And so in one hand, you have this guy who thought he was doing enough, but he actually was doing whatever that math is, 16 or 17 times short of what was actually necessary, right? And so not half, not 2/3 of what's necessary, literally 17 times about don't check my math there, about 17 times less than what would be effective. This is exactly why you need to approach business development with a so much volume that it's almost impossible to fail mentality. If you or your team are not hitting sales goals, or I would basically say stop focusing on the end result and just start focusing on the daily actions that actually drive them, right? How many calls are being made? How many doors are being knocked? How many direct messages are being sent? How many networking events did we go to in the past week? How many buildings are we walking into? And how often are we updating our dream 100 list or our targeted list to make sure that we are keeping track and keeping the people in front of us that we want to be working with? How many actual conversations are happening? Those are the things that you need to look at because those are the precursors to the outcomes of actually selling a deal. So, too many companies, in my world, I work with a lot of roofing companies, and there's way too many that quit way too soon because they just underestimate the amount of effort that is actually required to succeed. And they end up saying that door knocking or cold calling doesn't work, or, walking into buildings doesn't work, but it's not the case. The reality is they're just not doing enough of it. And so business development, again, no matter what strategy you're utilizing, requires real work. And so requires real volume. But at the end of the day, it's not just about volume. That's like a key element of it, but it's also about prioritizing the right leads. And in my head, and the way I see business, not all leads are actually created equal, right? How you approach each type of lead depends on their current relationship with your business, the awareness of, their own needs or potential issues, and their understanding of how your company could potentially solve those, right? So the way I frame this is that there's three categories of leads. We have hot leads, warm leads, and cold leads. And it's actually really simple. Hot leads are just your past clients, right? They already purchased a project, a repair, a service, an inspection, like whatever. They've purchased something from your roofing company. So they already know, like, and trust you, and the relationship is already built, right? Sometimes it needs a little more mending than some of them will need a little more mending than others, but it makes it easier to re-engage these people. And when you frame it the right way, you can easily sell your old clients into new service agreements and basically have a fresh start to the relationship servicing their roofs. So those are hot leads. Secondly, we've got warm leads. So warm leads are going to be the people that are aware of your existence, but they haven't yet purchased something from you, right? So this group would include your family, your friends, your past prospects. So roofs you've walked, but they never actually came to fruition. Other professionals in adjacent industries like real estate or insurance that have, that have referrals for you. And that's how I encompass, like, what is a warm lead versus a hot lead. Now, cold leads are people that are the exact opposite of warm, right? The people that don't know you exist or that don't know your service is essentially what you do. And these guys are going to require the most effort to engage because you have to build trust. You have to build, you have to get them to know you, have to get them to like you from the ground up. And I also call this one the wild card, though, because you never really gonna until you get into it and you start doing it, you don't really know who you're gonna come into contact with, right? When you're prospecting cold markets, and sometimes you can hit the jackpot with somebody that's already ready to pull the trigger because you came into their world at the right time. I literally was setting up a company not too long ago, 3 or 4 months ago. And as soon as they started doing their cold outreach, they called a building owner or a business owner that just happened to be the building owner. And he had a $950,000 check sitting on his desk. The insurance company had already paid him. He had like bullet holes that had like basically pierced the membrane, let tons of water inside, and the insurance company was paying for it. So again, you never know what you're going to walk into. But for me, strategically, I don't want to count on those anomalies, right? I don't want to count on a jackpot. If I hit the jackpot, amazing, that's a great bonus. But I typically focus on the hot leads first. And the reason we focus on the hot leads first is basically, or the hot, then the warm, then the cold, is pretty simple. The hot leads are going to convert faster because they already trust you to some degree, like you just heard me say a few minutes ago. And it's just easier, in my experience, to sell someone who's already done business with you than to convince someone who's never even heard of you before. So if you want to generate leads quickly, I would start with your past clients first, and then I'd move on to the people that know you exist, and then expand into cold outreach and doing your cold calls and your cold walk-ins and knocking on doors and all of that stuff. So to summarize everything about generating leads and pursuit marketing is that pursuit marketing, in my eyes, beats waiting for leads. It beats, spending a bunch of money on ads that aren't going to convert for you anyways. And volume is going to beat luck, right? So that's the whole thing where I'm like, it takes more than most people think is actually required. But when you combine that high volume outreach with lead prioritization, you guys are never going to struggle to get deals again. And now that I've kind of covered the whole lead generation side, let's move on to pillar 3, which is the sales conversion process. The sales conversion piece is going to be the most critical piece to this entire trifecta, because most roofing companies that come into my world, they believe in their bones that that they have a lead problem, right? That their leads aren't good enough or they don't have enough leads. But in reality, I see it as a conversion problem once I open up Pandora's box and kind of look inside. If you don't have a proven sales process, you've got a leaky bucket, right? Your business is a leaky bucket. And that kind of brings me to the next step and what we're going to dive into here, which is we've got to close deals and we've got to convert them into paying customers, and we've got to turn those paying customers into long-term accounts. And so that's what separates a real business from what I think of as like a job by job, from a job by job hustle. And so the biggest fails that I typically see are that the companies that are not doing this is that they're treating every lead the same, right? They're not having a structured approach to kind of analyzing and diagnosing what the situation is. Number 2, they're rushing into quoting jobs before fully diagnosing the situation. They literally go into every opportunity and think that they are there just to put a number to that job. And it's not the reality at all. But the third thing that I see is that when a deal doesn't close, they're letting those leads slip through the cracks because they don't have a system for follow-up or a system for lead recycling. But to the alternative, the best roofing companies that I work with, they never let a lead go to waste. They have a proven process to diagnose the client's real needs before offering a solution, right? They're not going out and just writing up a bid for every single project. There's actually a fair amount that they go out and they realize like, hey, this is not our type of job, right? They're also closing deals faster because they're reducing the uncertainty and the friction by asking the right questions and becoming an advisor because they understand the actual deal problems that these building owners and property managers are dealing with. And the last thing is that they're monetizing every single qualified lead. So if it's a project that they know they want, they are closing it, whether it's today, next month, next year, because they are recycling those leads. And so in my world, we use something called the ladder framework. So if you know anything about my businesses, our logo is a ladder, right? So being crafty and creative, nice and clever, we created the ladder framework. And so ladder stands for listen, assess, determine, define, explain, recommend. Okay, 6-stage sales process. In stage 1, we've got to listen because we've got to understand what are they telling us and what's their past experience with roofers and their roof. Number 2, or stage number 2, when we're assessing, we've got to understand what is the real problem, and then also what is the diagnosis of the roof, like what's the condition of the roof. And in order to do this, we basically say, where is that roof at on the life cycle spectrum of a roof, right? Is it an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F? Stage number 3 is what we call determine. And so we're basically trying to determine what is their budget and what is their risk tolerance for a new roof system, right? Or the type of repair that we're going to put into it. Stage 4 is define, which is what is the best solution based on their goals and the roof condition. Stage 5 is going to be explain, and this is just where we educate them on the options and the cost of inaction, the cost of not moving forward. And so a lot of times you're not out there because the roof's leaking. You're out there because it's causing an issue with a tenant, it's causing business interruption or a potential loss in business revenue for that business. You got to figure out what it is and figure out what that cost of inaction is so that you can push on an emotionally made decision versus a logical made decision. And most roofers live in the land of logic, right? They're not getting the prospects to actually open up emotionally about what this potentially could do to their business or to their typically their business. And so stage number 6 is what we call recommend. This is where we're just going to, based on all of the information that we've gathered at this point, we've got to offer the right solution, again, based on their needs, not just what's easiest to sell for us or what we think could be a home run for us. Now, as a business owner myself, I know that every lead costs time or money to generate, so we never want a lead to go to waste. I'm going to splice in a quick video here so that you can understand how I train sales reps to actually navigate the on-roof diagnosis to figure out which monetization path we're going to take this roof down, or if we just need to recycle this lead.
When you guys have an opportunity, right, you guys are going to go on site and they're going to inspect what's going on that roof. The way that I would have them think about it, especially in your guys' market where you deal with potential insurance claims, is the first thing those guys are that we want to train them to look for is like, is there an insurance claim, right? And it's a simple yes or no. Oh, it's not always simple, but it's like, is there a possible insurance claim here? Yes or no. And if the answer is no, then we can continue down our track and we would say, okay, so there's no insurance claim here. What is the grade of this roof system, right? And so we would try to delineate. The reason that we would want to try to figure out what the grade is because we're trying to delineate whether we need to estimate for a reskin or a replacement or a restoration, or does it just need minor repairs and a maintenance agreement, right? Which would be the PMA, the preventative maintenance agreement. So the idea is that even on a brand new roof, right? If a roof was just put on a few months ago and I'm walking it, there's a high likelihood that I'm going to be able to find something that needs to be done there, right? Whether it's cold welds or details that were done incorrectly, or guys that, maybe dropped their tools on the roof and, poked holes in the roof or whatever the case might be. And so if I realize that, hey, there's no insurance claim here and the roof doesn't need to be replaced and it's not, in bad enough shape to need a coating or a retrofit, if you're Ben, and we're like, okay, so this thing doesn't need replaced, doesn't need coated, doesn't need a retrofit, doesn't have an insurance claim. Let's look for some deficiencies, right? Let's see what we can find, what repairs we can find on that roof. And that's where we put most of our focus. Now, the idea is that we're going to want to try to pinpoint down and expand that scope, like I was talking earlier, to as big as we can make it, right? The ideal target point is that we want to get your average scope on repairs up to around the $7,500 to $10,000 mark. And there's I don't know if the guys from Refresh are on here or if the guys from Rhino are on here, but those two guys have their average ticket last year on repairs were over 20,000. So it's possible to get to 7,500, right? It takes a little bit of work and a little bit of digging, but it can happen. Now, in that instance, we would sell the repair and then we would, through storytelling, we would build the value of preventative maintenance. However, you're going to have, especially in the multifamily world, which is why it caught me off guard earlier. I had to ask David for confirmation. They were that like in the multifamily world, they're not usually looking for preventative maintenance, right? They're very reactive. They're always trying to squeeze, or not always, but a lot of times they're trying to squeeze out every penny they can for the investors in those properties. And so what we would do is we would try to push them into that preventative maintenance so that we could monetize it. But at the same time, if we can't monetize a deal, then the next best thing is going to be to recycle that lead. So right here, you'll see, did we get a signed agreement? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then we go to that master service agreement, which is free. And so what happens in that master service agreement is we're not doing any preventative maintenance. All we're doing is we're saying, cool, we'll sign you up for this master service agreement and we'll let you know that you get the perks of, if something goes wrong here, we will service you in this manner, right? All outlined in that master service agreement. Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, that's the part, is that it's what question, how do you open that to provide the two pathways? We're having a hard time delineating which how to, contrast the two. And I think that's where you're going.
I wouldn't even talk about master service agreements until I know that they're 100% out on not doing preventative maintenance.
Gotcha.
It's like,
Okay.
then it's like, okay, cool, Aaron, no big deal. I understand. We deal with a lot of property managers that don't have the authority or don't have the bandwidth to don't have the power to basically, sign the property up for this type of a long-term agreement. So what we'll do is we'll just put you into our master service agreement. So that way we can ensure your roof's still taken care of. We're just not going to do the preventative maintenance. So we're just going to come out here every 6 months and we're going to basically create a scope of work. So you always understand and audit the roof. So you always understand what you're up against, on your roof, what challenges you guys have, forthcoming. So that's what I call like a back pocket, last ditch effort to get them so that you can recycle that lead. Because it's like, no matter what, to get that opportunity, right? To even get this on-site inspection, your guys are either going out and knocking on doors, right? Or they've leveraged the relationship, or you've paid a bunch of money through whatever advertising efforts. And so it costs a lot of time or money to get these inspections. The last thing we want to do is go out there, go through the whole inspection process, not be able to sell them anything or whatever. And just to say like, well, they weren't interested in preventative maintenance. So I guess it's a no-go. The idea is that, eventually something that roof's going to need something. You might as well start to build that relationship and be like, cool, I'll see you in 6 months. We'll come take a look at the roof again. Because the reality is I've had guys tell me, they're like, well, if they're not buying, then I'm not going to, expend my resources on coming back and looking at it. And I can understand that to a certain extent. But the reality is if somebody called into your office and they said, hey, we've got an issue going on, or we want you to come look at our roof, you're going to go do that for free, right? You're going to go walk that roof for free. So why would you not do it on a lead that you've already paid for and you've already started to build some rapport, right? That's my argument towards it. So.
Okay, I hope that was super helpful for you guys. And I can assure you, if you follow this model, you guys will stop starting from zero every single January 1st. And instead of constantly just being on that hamster wheel of chasing the next deal, you'll be able to stack revenue, own your market, and really just build a roofing business that actually scales, like so many that don't, And if everything I talked about here makes sense to you and it sounds interesting and you want my help on actually implementing this stuff into your business, here's kind of what you guys could do next. If you just click the link somewhere around this video, we can have a quick chat and just talk about basically how I can put these strategies to work for you. I'll walk through exactly how I implement this model inside the companies we work with and help you execute it inside your own business. So if that sounds good, or if that sounds interesting, just click the link below. Let's have a chat and I'll see you on the inside. Talk soon.